Hi everybody, today we're talking about adding rational numbers. This time we're focusing on decimals. Just like last time we did fractions, decimals are also rational numbers. 3 ideas that we need to talk about before we go on are the 3 rules of how we add integers that are also going to be applied to adding rational numbers. If we have the same sign, we need to add the absolute value and keep the sign of both of them. So if I have -12 plus -3, my final answer there is to think, okay, 12 plus 3, the absolute value is 15, I keep the negative. If I have different signs, I subtract the lesser absolute value from the greater, and I keep the sign of the greater. So in this case, I have 12 plus -3, those signs are different. I think 12 minus 3, I'm left with 9. I keep the sign of the 12, so it's still positive 9. Let's say I changed this, and I made this -12 plus 3. My first step is still to think 12 minus 3 because I need to take the absolute values, subtract. Now, since 12 is bigger and 12 is negative, my answer should be -9. The last one is if we're adding additive inverses or opposites, we say it is always 0. Here's an example here. -6 plus 6 is 0, always 0. Okay, let's do a little review of adding decimals. Just remember that when we add decimals, our decimals need to line up so that all of our place values lines up. Just like when we're adding 3-digit numbers, we need our ones, tens, and hundreds to line up. Same thing here. We need our ones, tenths, hundredths, thousands, and so on. Now I have -4.05 or -4 and 5 plus 10 and 62. -4 and 5 plus 7 and 62 hundredths. So those are different signs. So what we do with different signs, as we saw on the other slide, was we need to subtract those 2 numbers from each other, and we'll keep the sign of the bigger. So we'll take 7 and 62 hundredths and subtract 4 and 5 hundredths. Now it works the same way, just like as if we had a 3-digit number. So I subtract 2 from 5, I need to borrow and carry the 1, so I have 12 minus 5 is 7, 5 minus 0 is 5, 7 minus 4 is 3. The decimal stays in the same place, and my final answer is 3 and 57 hundredths. Now, let's look back up at the sign really quickly. Which number is bigger? 7.62 is bigger, so we keep its sign. It means positive, so we end with positive 3.57. Let's try this one together. You don't have this on your page, but you must write it down. Also, I want you to put a circle around B, just to make sure that I know that you make sure to do B. Let's talk about this one. -1.7 plus 1.02. Again, different signs, so we know we're subtracting. 1.7 minus 1.02 because we subtract the bigger absolute value from the smaller absolute value. Now, one thing we need to do before we get started is when I line it up, I have 7 right here in the tens place, but I don't have anything in the hundredths place to line up with the 2. So you need to add a 0 there. Anytime that you line up your decimals and realize one end is bigger than the other, longer than the other, you need to add a 0. So again, I subtract here, I need to borrow 10 minus 2 is 8, 6 minus 0 is 6. I'm left with this as 68 hundredths. Now, let's go back up to the top just to make sure we didn't forget anything. 1.7 has a greater absolute value than 1.02, so we keep the sign of the -1.7, which leaves me with -0.68. Let's go to a word problem now. Here's example 2. Example 2 talks through some of annual profits for a financial company. So there's every year and the profit they incurred each year. So in 2008, they ended up losing money with -1.7 billion, lost money again, and now every time it's positive, it means they gain money. 1.7, 0.85, and 3.6. Now let's go through some of these. In order to find the total profit, total addition, we're going to add all these numbers together. Now, before we even begin, what I'm seeing here is that I have negative 1.7 and positive 1.7. Those are still additive inverses. It doesn't just have to be integers. Negative 1.7 plus 1.7 would give me 0 because additive inverses added together are 0. That leaves me with 4.75, 0.85, and 3.6 that I still have to add together. Now, since 4.75 is actually negative here, I'm going to go ahead and add the two positives first, and then we'll add it with the negative. So I have 0.85, 3.6. I lined up the decimal. I see again here that I have one place value that's here but not here, so let's add a 0. Since they're the same signs, this time we're adding. If we also had a negative and a negative, we could also add here. 5 plus 0 is 5. 8 plus 6 is 14. 1 plus 3 is 4. So our final answer for this addition part is $4.45. Okay, let's go ahead and add 4.45 to this. Now, what do we see that we need to do here? Well, different signs mean subtraction. So let's go ahead and set up a little subtraction right here. We've got 4.75. We're going to subtract 4.45 from that, since 4.45 is smaller. Again, it doesn't matter which one's negative right now. 5 minus 5 is 0. 7 minus 4 is 3. 4 minus 4 is 0. So I'm left with 0.3. I'm almost to my final answer. I go back and look at this. It has a bigger value than this. Therefore, I keep the sign of the negative. So my final answer would be negative 0.3. Look back at the problem. All of those are in billions. So my final answer is negative $0.3 billion. For all these word problems, always look at which order would be best to combine them in. If you didn't combine them, the negative 1.7 and the 1.7 first, that's fine, but it'll just take you a couple more steps to get